You can't rush magic. Even so, 8 years is a long time to wait for a sequel, especially one that's been teased almost the entire time. But loading up Bayonetta 3 on Switch is like a spell washes over me, and barely any time has passed at all. Longtime fans should feel relieved, though as ever, when you deal with the dark arts, it can come with a price.
You know, I really love New York, but ill-behaved tourists can be quite a pain.
Fans of Nintendo's handheld will breathe a sigh of relief at Bayonetta 3's performance at least. Both docked and undocked, on a Switch OLED at least, the gunslinging witch's agile combat felt incredibly slick to play, maintaining what appeared to be a solid 60 FPS. There was the odd hiccup, but they were rare, which feels especially impressive given how extra all of the additions to the demon-infused fighting are. Concessions have been made graphically, particularly noticeable in a few specific busy sequences, but it feels in line with the recent Bayonetta Switch ports and still boasts a fantastic visual direction that's always captivating. Bayonetta 3 really is a feast for the senses, thanks in part to a narrative conceit that's allowed Platinum Games to really go wild. When a strange threat attacks Earth that's neither angel nor demon, Bayonetta must step up to save not only her world, but as many as possible. Known as the Homunculi, these baddies put the entire multiverse in peril, which means the Switch's witch must hop through dimensions to kick their glowing green butts. These range from a Tokyo in the midst of an attack from giant homunculi monsters to sandy Egyptian ruins, and even an ancient China-themed one chock full of lava. Just as there are multiple worlds, there are multiple Bayonettas too. Despite this only being the third game, it manages to feel like a long-time series celebration that works in much the same way as something like Into the Spider-Verse, even though these are mostly original riffs rather than references to larger bodies of work. Bayonetta doesn't only have herself to rely on, recurring characters return, including Jean, who now has her own mandatory side-scrolling stealth missions. For a side activity, they're fun enough, but having to play them gets in the way of the game's best bits, the combat.
I'll never bow to anyone again. Not even myself. Asking me to get along? Then we'd better be off.
Bayonetta 3 is very slick. Dodge just before an enemy attacks, and she'll activate Witch Time to temporarily slow enemies, meaning you'll feel like you're running circles around them. The huge combo menu is just as empowering, with almost any combination of moves ending in a different finishing Wicked Weave move. It can feel wonderfully expressive, and Bayonetta 3 knows to keep this intact. But despite this heady brew, not everything in the cauldron complements it. Missions, for example, feel longer than ever. The actual runtime of them might not be all that different to earlier games, but it's in how they're paced. Some of them will have quite large open areas, sometimes you'll move between whole dimensions mid-mission, and there are lengthy boss fights. It's also rare for a mission to not have some kind of section that's annoying to replay, whether that's a platforming challenge or a slower paced puzzle. Most of the set-piece boss fights too are very gimmicky, only occasionally putting you through your combat paces. We're living in a post-Devil May Cry 5 world, where almost every level in that game is a blast to whirl up and battle through again. However, doing so in Bayonetta 3 actually left me groaning about having to actually reach the fun bits of the level. You might think the demon slaves, the most advertised gigantic demons, would fall into the groan-worthy category. Surely these lumbering beasts slow down the fights too, right? Well, in a way they do, but they manage to complement Bayonetta's flips, slides, and button-hold gun blasts surprisingly well. 2 attacks can be queued up at once by the demons, meaning you can rely on their slightly slower movements to give you enough time to slap foes between managing their next moves. 2 rhythms become 1. When it comes to Bayonetta's demon-powered weapons themselves, there's a bit less creativity at first. No longer can you equip different weapons to her hands and feet. Each of the 2 gear sets you can hot-swap between feature only one unified weapon, but it feels fair enough in practice, especially with how they already interact with the demon-slave system. They still have built-out combo trees, which feel more manageable to learn. But it's not just Bayonetta you play in this fight. Newcomer Viola gets her own chapters, acting as a sort of guide to Bayonetta. She's from another dimension herself with a much more pop-punk aesthetic as a learning witch. While Viola's combat provides some welcome twists, something about her feels like reinventing the Devil May Cry wheel. Bayonetta's highly mobile combat ultimately ends up being more fun to play with. It's a good thing that Bayonetta, as always, is the star. The Witch Warrior is still a joy to both watch and play. When taking charge of the action, Bayonetta is more fun to rip and tear with here than ever before, with some smart evolution in how her role as a summoner can add to her combat, combat without taking anything meaningful away. But some of the same issues that plagued its predecessors are just as present here as well, if not more so. Just get out of Bayonetta's way and let her do what she does best, which might not be very nice, but sure can be hella fun. We give Bayonetta 3 3.5 stars out of 5.
I'm being fucking